Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. This video is going to be short, so I'm not going to do this video live. I'm just going to push it up. WikiLeaks pushed this out recently. Qanon pushes for regime change in Iran, mirroring long-held CIA, Mossad, and neocon goals. Now, a lot of people may not know what Qanon is. Essentially, there's this post that's been popping up on Reddit that would mutter certain things, and people would take it as if it's some kind of message from some kind of person in a deep state that's fighting for their interests. And they would interpret what's being said, and they would take it as if they have some secret knowledge. That's what Qanon is. Some people have made the argument, I think Elizabeth Voss, that this was some kind of psyop. That ultimately the stuff that they are pushing out is just a rah-rah for Donald Trump, as if Donald Trump is working behind the scenes in the best interest of other people. Essentially, don't believe your lying eyes. Believe what we're telling you is going on behind the scenes. He's fighting and trying to clean the swamp by putting alligators in the swamp because the alligators are going to eat the other alligators or whatever. I'm just making a point to you that people have taken mutterings, silent, anonymous mutterings, to be something more than what they are. I don't know if this is a psyop because I don't know how many people this is actually affecting or touching. I don't know why anybody would care to bother. I don't know if this is a troll. I don't know if this is a propagandist. I don't know if this is some kind of thing that's associated with Trump. I have no idea. No idea. Nor do I care. I don't necessarily think it matters. I understand that in a world where nothing is solid, it's hard to know where to put your feet on the ground. That the institutions, for the most part, that have been built around us are seen frayed and honestly, liars. Meaning the way the media, the perspective that the media gives you, this American first perspective that loses all context with what's taking place in the rest of the world, actually taking place in the rest of the world. This militaristic perspective of the world, where anything that takes place requires this kind of militaristic response from us, and it's assumed by the media that this is going to take place. I'm making the point that I understand that the things around us, the politicians, these guys lie profusely. They tell you one thing, they do something else. And even when they're telling you what they're doing and they're being honest about it, they're often doing things that you don't necessarily want them to do. Out of touch with the public's sentiment on many of these issues. Take for the perspective of healthcare. Donald Trump was perfectly okay with trying to gut Obamacare, the tepid healthcare that we had. The public was completely against it, didn't stop him one iota. Tax cuts for plutocrats. Again, public is against it, didn't matter one iota. They're going to go after Medicare and Social Security. Obama getting involved in Syria. Again, the public against it. Now, for a larger conflict, the public was able to stop Obama for it, but it didn't stop him from giving weapons to terrorists. Nor did this stop him from taking military operations in there without him telling us. Look, all I'm saying is I can understand how there seems to be a detachment from what the public wants versus what the government wants. And there are certain ways that this detachment is employed based on essentially buying off of the parties. They're bought. But that doesn't mean that looking for some other insider, as if somebody is working out for your best interests, is the way to go about it. And depending on what's being said, it should give you some red flags on who the person is. It's one of those things where you can't necessarily always know who you're dealing with, but based on what they say, it gives you an idea on where they're coming from. Meaning, if somebody complains that Obama is not being hawkish enough because you're not putting enough troops in Syria, that gives you a perspective on that person from the standpoint of military. It gives you a perspective on that person from the standpoint of life and the consequences for people who are in those areas, a certain depraved empathy. Versus, and a right-wing perspective, by the way, as opposed to a left-wing perspective of why are you in this country in the first place, and it is illegal to be in that country. You have no justification to be in that country. You're murdering people in that country. That gives you a perspective of where I'm coming from. That's all I'm saying. Qanon is now advocating for a lot of murder, a lot of people getting killed. squeezing every ounce of somebody else's blood. Doesn't even show his face when he's putting this out here. He or she, whoever. Doesn't even show their mug as they out here advocating for somebody else's cousins, the brothers and sisters, to put their lives on the line, to kill other people's brothers and cousins and sisters. It's not free Iran. Fight, fight, fight. Regime change. People have the power. We stand with you. If nothing else gives you a perspective of the person who's writing this, this should. They're calling for regime change. Donald Trump has called for regime change. That maniac, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, all of these people are hawks on Iran. And just so happen, Qanon comes out with, hey, we should attack Iran also. You're being had. That's what I'm telling you. You are being had. I'm not going to keep this one long because there's nothing else to keep long. If they're advocating for a perspective of war, you're being had. Doesn't even show his mug or she show her mug. We're going to advocate for war from the shadows and pretending as if this is something more than what it is. This is either a troll, a propagandist, and if it is a psyop, I don't particularly care which one of those it is. Ultimately, it's advocating for war, the wide-scale slaughter, sending your relatives to another country in order to annihilate somebody else's relatives. And you have to ask the question of why. We broke those deals, not Iran. That was us. The rest of the world is still with Iran on those deals. We unilaterally made a decision to break a deal with other nations. How on earth is this guy or this woman or whoever this is, this anonymous thing from the shadows advocating for policy that, again, like WikiLeaks says, lines up with Mossad, Saudi Arabia, and in this case, Donald Trump? Whether this is a psyop, whether this is a troll, whether this is a propagandist, I don't care which. The fact that they're advocating war should give you some idea on the quantity to which you're dealing with. You're being had. I'll end it here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. By the way, understand that the world is somewhat with the loss of trust and the loss of legitimacy, there comes this thing of, well, loss of trust. One of the things that I try to focus on is what is my ultimate intent and what is my ultimate goal? My ultimate goal is less war, less chaos. Human beings have a better spot in life, and this acknowledgement that the point of life is not just endless toil. You work to the degree that you need to get your resources done. Yes, people always will want to do something, but toiling away in order to put money in the pockets of somebody else is nonsense. 95% of the wealth went to the top 1%. I suspect that number is going to be much higher under Trump. It can only be 5% higher. This is a status quo racket that is in place. And this status quo racket is held in place by both parties. Both thinks it's perfectly okay. Both look at the world and think the world is perfectly fine in the way that it is. This issue here is based on class. Them telling you to go and murder people who are, for the most part, in a similar boat that you're in is nonsense. And it completely misses the point if that's what this random, anonymous, whatever, is trying to get people to get behind. We toil away, day in and day out. And fact is, we found a way to liquidate work and labor and put it into this kind of substance, this ethereal substance of cash that's not really real, that's ultimately a legal fiction that we pass between each other. But it takes on a quantity that goes beyond a certain legal fiction, but it only takes on that quantity because we need it to survive. But that's contrived. That's a forced scarcity of sorts. You have some that take this and hoard this. Now this is nonsense. The only way for them to make that cash is for them to have a society to which they can make that cash. The only way for them to operate and function is for them to have labor and human beings, meaning Bill Gates doesn't get the billions and billions of dollars that he gets. Jeff Bezos doesn't get the billions and billions of dollars that he gets without labor in order to allow it. public allowing them to get that much cash is a shame on the public itself. In the same way that I look at royalty and understand why somebody would pretend to be royalty, well, yeah, if you're going to allow me to pretend to be this, then I'm going to pretend to be this. In a planet with finite resources, you've allowed a very small people to accumulate and hoard those resources at the expense of everyone else. And that everyone else, the 99%, has fallen for the trick and gone along with it. And would even fight like hell for it. The point I'm trying to make to you is there are larger issues at work that are specific in our country, just like it's specific in many other countries. War with Iran is not on the agenda for the things that need to take place. What needs to take place is a rise of consciousness in the workforce to understand that we could do this differently. We can be better. How we treat each other can be better. The society itself, we're the richest society on the planet. And I've shown the other video, the healthcare thing, the infant mortality rates, the happiness index, all of these things getting across that people are massively unhappy and is missing the entirety point of life. If whatever mystical figure from the shadows is not getting across this element of class, if it's not getting across this element that there are problems in this country that we need to solve in this country, if it's telling you to attack and kill and murder other people who are in similar disposition that you're in, people who are just in a struggle trying to live their lives, then they've missed the boat and you're being woefully misled. I'll leave it here. Thanks, guys.